Hey everybody, welcome. It's Mike with Insider Secrets and it's Tuesday and I am joined today by Megan Hills. Megan, would you tell our guests what they're going to have the joy of listening to today?
Yeah, you guys are going to get a lot of insider tips on relationships and how to nourish them.
Great. Thanks, Megan. I'm so glad that you're here today and you guys are going to have to tune in to hear this great show today. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Welcome to this week's edition of Insider Secrets, the show that turns multifamily investing into reality. Each show, we interview guests who are seasoned professionals actively closing and managing real estate deals. Your host, Mike Morawski, has more than 30 years of multifamily real estate investing and property management experience. Mike is the founder of My Core Intentions and has been involved in over $285 million of transactions, focuses on helping you create short-term cash flow and long-term wealth. Here's your host, Mike.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's Mike with your host of Insider Secrets. And you remember Insider Secrets is brought to you by My Core Intentions. So let me ask you, have you been thinking lately about your intentions, about what matters most in your life, what's really and truly important? You know, at MCI, our interest and our focus is to invest in our clients' future through an educational and training platform that help you create short-term cash flow and long-term wealth while empowering you to execute sound real estate principles and investing strategies in property management and ownership while living a balanced lifestyle. And the thing that I find is in real estate, we get so out of balance because we get so focused on other things or we see a shiny object and we go after it. And it's about living a balanced lifestyle and what's really important in life. So, shamelessly, I share a lot of those topics and stories in my newly released book, Exit Plan. And you should grab a copy because it's about your journey on acquiring multifamily properties and why you need an exit plan before you buy. But enough of that. I am really excited about my guest and active real estate investor this morning, Megan Hills. Megan, you want to say hi really quick?
Hey everyone, it's a pleasure to be on this show this morning and connect with you.
Glad you're here. Megan and I met interestingly enough, but let me tell you a little bit about her. Megan is a multifamily investor who's the co founder of the Brem Group, which focuses on purchasing value add communities in established markets. Megan started her career as a marketing director for a property management firm and decided she wanted more financial freedom and the ability to spend more time with her family. Megan understood early that the key to success would be developing strong relationships within her network. One of Megan's favorite lines she often tells her team is to change your mindset from I have the network or else I will fail. I want to network because of my why. In 2021, the Brem Group is on track to close 1,000 units. That's a pretty big aspiration to be closing 1,000 units in a year. I know that I've done something similar in my past, and it's interesting. So, Megan, I'd love to hear from you in one word what drives you.
Yeah, it's definitely my family. For me, I grew up from a hardworking family. My dad used to wake up at 4 a.m., go out, work all day, try to make it home in the evening, spend time with me. A great father, but he spent all his time working. I don't want to be that way with my family. I don't want anybody to put a value on my work. It's such a weird thought process that employers, they look at you and they're like, you're worth 20 an hour, you're worth 30 an hour. And that's something that for me, I always felt like I had so much more to offer than that. So my why and my reasoning is my family. I want to be able to be a part of every milestone or every big accomplishment that's going on in their lives and help support them as well. For me, I don't want my parents to ever have to worry about how am I going to afford mortgage? What does my retirement plan look like? I never want them to have to worry a day in their life.
Yeah. Very interesting. That whole family and work ethic thing are so closely intertwined. It sounds like you have a really strong work ethic and you could get lost in that, but it's really that self-discipline that keeps you focused on family. And I commend you for that. That self-awareness is really good, right?
Yeah,
So,
something that we do is we set ground rules. For instance, as old school as this is, when you're at the table, no cell phones. On Sundays, We're spending time with each other, phones away, no work, because it does get hard, especially when you're traveling. You're like, oh, I want to go for this property this week. Oh my gosh, this deal is going to, close soon. I need to get my offer in. I need to find a way to raise money, whatever it might be. It's so easy for work to consume you. So it's about being able to say, hey, you know what? My family's the reason I'm doing this. So let me take a step back and appreciate my time with them.
Yeah, good for you. Hey, so I just want to tell everybody how we met. And I'm
Yeah.
a big advocate of this because I think that with the pandemic that's going on and people being locked up and being in their house and doing more business from home, it's hard to get out. And I really appreciate, I spend a lot of time on social media as you do. And you reached out last week and had a message out there that said, hey, my goal is to meet 2 people a day. And I jumped on that right away because I really like meeting people and networking and building relationships. And I think that's what life is all about. And you're not going to have great relationships with everybody, but you're going to have solid relationships with a few. And so that's why I jumped on that, because I wanted to meet you and talk to you and see where you were headed. And I commend you for that. So here's what I want to know. How many other people took advantage of that post, and have you connected with many more?
Yeah, so actually, since that post, I have had so many meetings, but I want to start off by saying, just from that post, I already have had like $500,000 to $1 million worth of money for investors saying, hey, I want to get in on this. Like, I see you're in multifamily. Like, I want to get in on this. Like, your next deal, let me get in on this. So I really want to say, put yourself out there. You have nothing to lose by doing so. But I've connected with over 30 plus people. I have 2 more meetings today. My LinkedIn inbox was just full of messages, but it was honestly so refreshing to know that there's like-minded people out there that just want to connect. And it's not always about what can you do for me, but that aspect you take should be, what can I do for you? How can I add value to your business, Mike? What can I do to make your day better, your business more profitable? And taking that, because that's really how the solid relationships are formed, off of what can I do for you? I think a lot of times so many people approach us. I know I get a lot of those emails on LinkedIn, as I'm sure you do as well, where people are like, here's my business, X amount. I'm like, oh my gosh. But I think that's almost spurred me to say, hey, I want to reach out and see, how can I help you? How weird of a change would that be if you received a message saying, hey, Mike, I want to help you out. What can I do to make your day, your business better?
Yeah. And it's so critically important. And I think there's been a shift in business and in the world where people have come more to realize, hey, Megan, what can I do for you? How can I serve you? How can I help you? Because really, when it boils down to it, at the end of the day, that's what matters. We could probably get into a philosophical conversation around this about people's self-centeredness and things like that. And so I'm grateful that I got moved to the top of that list. Sounds like you had a lot of response, and I'm really grateful I got moved to the top of the list. So that was good.
I think though, even you saying that, like, it's one of those mentalities where you have to say, everybody's at the top of the list there. I'm not going to just filter through messages and say, I'm going to pick to respond to this person. You never know what someone brings to the table, what their next idea is. I think I shared with you, I had a college student, full-time college student, reach out to me, and he was like, hey, I want to get in this business. And instantly I was like, man, I don't know if I have time for this conversation even. I have all these calls, all these things I need to get done, underwriting to do. But I'm like, you know what? This kid could be the next best thing in this industry. So let me take time out to say, hey, here's the steps. Here's some contacts I have. I recommend you taking this route. This helped me be successful, because you never know how dedicated or how motivated someone is to their vision. And man, I would love if this guy closes, say, on 5,000 units just does something amazing where he's able to say, yeah, I met this girl on LinkedIn and she helped me out.
Yeah. Boy, what a story that would be. So listen, here's what I want to know. Tell us your backstory a little bit. How'd you get involved in real estate? What's your path been? And what drives you? Other than family, what drives you about the real estate business?
Yeah. So my past is, I come from a marketing director position with a student housing and conventional global firm. For me, it was a great experience because I got to meet a lot of international investors because they were global, directly reporting to Singapore, to different countries, interacting with them. And to be honest, I was like, man, I want in the game. Like, I don't want to be a pawn in the game. I want in the game. How do I get in the game? And then I saw a sponsored ad from Tyler Devereaux in the multifamily mindset. And I had the mentality of, oh, this is a free event. I have nothing to lose. Let me go to this event. I went to the event. Absolutely amazing. And it ended up saying, hey, spend $1,000 and you can go to this bigger event. So I'm like, okay, $1,000. But I'm the kind of person, still to this day, I don't like spending up $100, let alone $1,000 on something if I know it's not going to work. If I go to Chick-fil-A and drop $20, I'm like, man, I probably spent too much. So I'm frugal with my money. I always will be. But with that being said, we went to this event. Amazing. Went over the processes. It was a 3-day seminar. And then we got to the point where it was like $35,000 for a mentor. And I'm like, oh, shoot, $35,000. You want me to pay basically tuition and not be guaranteed to even get a community out of this. I was so freaked out, but I went for it. I was like, you know what? I believe in this. I believe in this vision. Real estate, it's not on trial. Look around. Most of the investors, over 90% of millionaires, have some sort of investment in real estate. And that fact alone shows that this industry is not on trial. So I'm thinking, you know what? There are so many people that haven't even had the exposure that I've had at that point because I was in the game in an essence, and they're taking this chance. So let me go out on a limb and take a chance too. And the best decision that I have ever made, the one-on-one pieces of the mentorship, the guidance, the direction. I think you and I made a joke last time we talked of, if a community goes on fire that I have, I know who to call. And how nice is that to know that if something catastrophic happens, I have resources there. So for me, that's how I got in the game, was following through a mentor. And I think that you actually might do some mentorship. So if anybody is on the edge of, should I take the jump or not? All I can tell you is real estate isn't on trial. Take the action needed to accomplish your goals. Something I had an issue with was I had a consumer mindset and not an investor mindset. In the grand scheme of things, $35,000 in this industry, it's not a lot. It's a drop in the bucket whenever it comes to dealing with these projects. And to go from, I don't want to spend $20 at Chick-fil-A to let me give you $35,000 for a mentorship, that's a big jump. So really trying to switch my mindset and say, I'm an investor. I'm worthy enough to be in this game. I have what it takes to be in this game. I want to be a part of it. So for me, getting that mindset coaching on how to change my approach, that's been such a big thing. From a lot of times, especially when early on, and we still face this a lot, is you get in the habit of saying, I can't do something. Like, oh man, they need a $5 million down payment. I can't do it. I don't have the resources for that. But instead of having that mentality, say, how can I do this? Sure. How can I expand my network and find people that are willing to donate this money or willing to believe in my company and my mission? And there's people out there, but it's just about changing that mindset. And that's why I really applaud the mindset coaches out there for me. Tyler Devereaux's been amazing. I know that you do it. I've seen a lot of great reviews come back. I personally started reading your book as well, that exit strategy, spot on. So for me, that's how I got in it. The next thing about real estate, it's my passion. It's addicting. You get in there, you start sending LOIs, you start getting that rush of energy. And then it's one of those things where it's a crazy whirlwind, but then you're like, let's do it again. Let's go in. I want to keep doing this. A lot of people just have the attitude of, I'll go in and I'll collect that 3 to 5% acquisition fee. It'll replace my income. I'll be done. No, when you get in the game, you're not going to want to pull out of the game. At that point, it's not about the acquisition fees. Yes, the passive cash flow is great, but it's about, this is my passion.
Yeah. You talked on so many smart things. One thing I picked up was that I probably need to raise my prices on coaching. Good for you, though, for spending that kind of money. And I love Chick-fil-A. But you know what? And you keep hitting on it when networking is so important, right? How many people do we know, and how many people know people? I know when I first went into the syndication business, I was able to take a database of 250 people and in about 3 year time grow it to 7,000 people. And as a result of that, we bought $60 million worth of real estate. So syndicating is really an interesting business model. You just put an LOI in on a property, didn't you?
Yes, and it did get accepted. So we were so excited to be in the Florida market. The Orlando market, to be exact, is where this community is at. It's a true value add community as well.
Good. Tell us a little bit about the deal and what attracted you to it.
Yeah, so for me, I like to look at 100 plus units. I really don't look at anything smaller than that, just for the simple fact everybody has a different philosophy on this. If I'm doing the same amount of work, the same amount of paperwork, I want a bigger check. My logic on that's pretty simple.
Yeah, right.
76 units, it was smaller than what I think that we would like. But with that being said, the returns were amazing, north of 26% return for investors, 9.9% cash on cash. And in today's market, finding that it's so rare. We've been underwriting deals left and right. And we've been having a hard time here lately just finding a good deal that would work. So venturing out to the Orlando market is something, it was a strategic move for us. We are actively looking to purchase more there, but it allowed us to be able to find this great little hidden gem. And whenever I saw the numbers, the cap on it was 7.9%. My first thought is it's not 7.9%. The broker just put that to try to attract you. Whenever I do the underwriting, it's going to be like 5%. It happens to me every time. But it actually was 7.9%. At that moment, I had to pump the brakes. I'm like, what plumbing issues do you have going on? What sketchy things happening here? But turns out the seller, he's an older gentleman and he just wants to liquidate and get out of the deal. So we were more than happy to come in and swoop it up. Yeah, that's where we're at right now.
Nice, good for you. And did you do this all virtually or have you been to the property?
So I am actually flying to Orlando next week to do a property tour. I always encourage that, especially before your money goes hard in that essence, get to the property, walk the property, but everything has been done virtually. I will say the broker on the deal has been absolutely amazing. He's made me feel a lot more comfortable throughout this deal. And that's such an important part as well, as having a good relationship with brokers. They can make a deal as easy as they want or as hard as they want for you. So ensuring when you're interacting with brokers, you're nothing but nice, but also you're not just kicking the tires. They get a lot of calls a day from people that really aren't interested in purchasing a community. They're just trying to scratch the surface, which I think is a good idea, but understanding that when a broker gets a call, they might be a little bit more, I guess, on edge of if you're really interested or not. So having that mindset going in, dropping some industry terms. Hey, we look for this DSCR, this cash, a value add community and a B location, and really just trying to drop those industry terms on them kind of helps reassure them, hey, we're serious about it.
Yeah, that you know what you're talking about and you're not just kicking the tires. Yeah. You bring up a really interesting point, and it goes back to relationship. I think we keep circling back on this conversation, but team building and networking, it is really important to have those relationships with realtors, with lenders, with people who are going to help your business that buy into your goal. I think that's one of the things we find in the industry is people don't take us seriously enough. And you have to have your team buy into your goal to help you move to the next level. Here's what I want to know, and I've been asking everybody about this lately. What was the average price per door on that deal?
So ours was $68,000. It's a very good price per door. From my research, the average right now is usually 85, 86,000 is where I've seen it. So this is going to be, I'm going to call it a B minus or a C plus. We are going to go in, we're going to redo the countertops and the flooring on it, but by no means is it in a terrible location or anything of that nature. The delinquency is low on it. Overall, it is just a really good deal, but we are going to go in, do some rehab. We want our residents to know, hey, we care about you. We want to improve these living conditions, make things a little bit nicer there. So showing them that there's going to be an ownership group in that cares. We're going to go in, complete your maintenance cost in 48 hours. We're not going to take a week or 2 weeks. You actually hit on something when you said lending broker. That has been one of my favorite relationships to go out and nourish. Your lending brokers can take such good care of you. They oftentimes, they know about the off-market deals. They will do the underwriting for you. Our lending broker, before we ever submit an LOI, he actually does his own underwriting on it as well to let us know like options and everything. And he is obviously actively in the market. He knows if someone is looking to sell or where they're at. So a lot of times we'll get a call from him saying, hey, I got this, off market deal. I want to show you before anybody else, gets it. And I can't speak highly enough on nourishing that relationship with a lending broker because, man, they can get you in on a lot of good deals.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt about that. I find it interesting, the price point, right? 68,000, you get C plus, B minus deal. I just talked to some guys that did a deal in Dallas, in your market. They paid 78,000 a door for a C deal. It's a value add. But here's the thing that's really been more interesting. I have a relationship with a guy in Phoenix who's a broker, and he was telling me last week that his average price per unit right now on C-class deals is $189,000.
Yeah.
So here's what what I'm formulating from this is you got to pick a market that you're financially comfortable in, where you can be. If it's that Phoenix market at 189,000, you're going to go in there and you're going to battle for a deal. Was it a battle for this deal in Orlando, or was it wide open?
It was a little bit of both. The seller is very picky on who they actually choose to be the buyer. So it was more so about winning the seller over and saying, hey, we want to make you comfortable with this deal. We're not the kind of company, we're not going to go in and terminate your staff right away. Not saying if they don't perform, we won't ever do it. But with that being said, this seller was very big on actually the relationship side of things. He cares about his team in place, an owner operator, and cares about a lot more what I'm going to call the mushy gushy relationship things outside of I care about the bottom dollar. And at the end of the day, finances in this industry do tend to be top on the list, and then it's the relationships after. But he was just really picky on who he's going to sell his community to. So fingers crossed, I think we're on his good side right now. But we'll definitely, see how that plays out for us. So to be transparent, I like the Orlando market a lot. And I would say, do your research on a market, look at the population, look at, are there new businesses coming into the market? But another thing is, go out, make connections with those businesses. A lot of times you can set up referrals if, say, a hospital is expanding. Go out, just give the hospital a call, say, we would love to cut you a discount. We've before in the past filled up 50 units just by going out and offering a referral discount to someone, saying, hey, you know what, your workers live right across the street. It's a hectic time, everything's crazy. Let us cut you guys a big discount here. And little things like that, it makes such a difference in this industry.
Yeah, I think some of your background is in the property management space, in student housing, which is student housing is different than the market rate, but you bring up a good point is how do you cater your tenant today in the midst of everything that's going on so that you get your rent? And with eviction moratoriums in place, and I live in Chicago, and here in Cook County in Chicago is probably, I would say, close to the toughest place in the country because there is just no flexibility on evictions at all. How are you dealing with your tenants in the midst of this today?
Yeah. So that's another thing for us. There are certain markets that we choose not to enter just because of that. To be transparent, 3 weeks ago, we found a deal actually in Chicago by Hyde Park that we wanted to do. It was a beautiful asset. The returns were amazing, but we had to step back and say, this market right now, it's not for us just because there is no wiggle room with the eviction policy. Can you evict in this time? Yes, you can. But with that being said, you have to get the tenants buy-in as to why they should evict. I've actually had some friends and colleagues that have personally flown out to communities before to talk to the tenants and say, hey, you need to get out at this point. We'll even incentivize you to get out. We'll pay for $500 or we'll give you $2,000 for you to get out, because essentially, if you can't evict, they don't have to pay. That delinquency is just going to keep growing. I hate to ever encourage anybody to do that, but in the same breath, you might have to go and make a trip and incentivize a tenant to move out. So you can evict without evicting. It's probably going to cost you a penny, but you're also saving money on court fees as well.
Yeah, that whole cash for keys deal, right?
Yeah.
So what, over your time in the business, any good or worst, what's the best or worst deal you've ever done? Do you have anything that really sticks out in your mind?
Yeah, for me, it's actually in Tallahassee, Florida, a 300 unit plus deal. To be honest, it's probably the most frustrating deal, because it was one of those where we probably should have renegotiated pricing a little bit with how much CapEx that's had to go into it and continue to go into it. But for me, I think that it's been amazing seeing this property that we got that was in horrendous condition and being able to rehab it, reposition it, rebrand it in the market and earn that reputation. That's really something that we pride ourselves in, is being able to go in and reposition a community. Whenever you get a community, and we like to, how can I word this? We are big on under promising and over delivering to our investors. If we tell you you're going to get a 16% return, we're really planning on a 22% return. But we like to over promise and over deliver. And that's what we did for this. We under promised. We were able to go in, make the changes, push rates by $50, even during COVID. We're making huge rental jumps just because that's where the market is. We're going to go in, we're going to rehab these units, and we're going to push them up to market value. We're not scared to push rates. And a lot of times, if you do push rates and tenants leave because they're uncomfortable with the pricing, don't be scared. Don't panic. And know you're just going to attract a new demographic. There's always what I call a changeover period where you're going to lose your current demographic when you start pushing rates. It might not be the $50 mark, the $75, but usually at the $100 mark, you're going to see people start to leave. And that's okay when it happens. Don't panic. There was a time where we're staring at 30 leases expiring and we're starting to get a little anxious here. But that's when you have to step back and say, you know what? We have rehabbed this community. We're going to reinvest in marketing at this point, and we're going to backfill these beds, and we're going to get a new demographic in. Our delinquency is going to drop. We're going to stay under 2% now. And your investors, they end up being a lot happier when that happens. So that was a deal that I'm very proud of. To be transparent, I haven't had any deals yet that have been just horrendous. But with that being said, we have had to back out of some deals before. There's been some that we would love to have done, but when you go in and you say, you know what, your delinquency is just too high at this point. There's so much more CapEx that's really going to go into this, and a lot of times they won't want to renegotiate the price. So that's why I always recommend go and travel to the communities, get your eyes on the communities. When you're looking at pictures, so many people Photoshop those. What you think might need a little bit of TLC might just need a lot of TLC. And when you're walking communities, look for things like big puddle out in front of a door to the side, because that might expose a leak going on. Whenever you're reading through these T12s, look at the utilities, look at the HVAC, especially if you're in the Florida markets, the Texas markets. Pay attention to those things, because it might just expose an underlying issue that's going to cost you a lot of money down the road. And it's okay if you're anticipating that cost. There's several times we go into a deal and we're like, you know what, this is going to be expensive, but that's fine. We're anticipating it. We want to fix it. It's going to make our residents' life better, and then we can push rates. But if you're not anticipating a major HVAC, plumbing issue, structural issue, it's tough. It's tough to overcome.
You know, it's interesting. You talk about something that I talk about in my book, and that's don't fall in love with a deal. Because if you fall in love with a deal, the worst thing to try and get out of is a marriage and a tough relationship. But I tell this story, and picture this, right? It's a beautiful spring morning. I'm in Dallas, and You can hear the landscapers in the distance cutting the grass and smell the grass. The steam's coming off the swimming pool, the dew sitting on the grass, the flowers are just popping through the dirt. I'm walking this property with the property manager and I'm falling in love. Not sure if it's the property or the property manager, but I all of a sudden I realize, uh-oh, I have an issue here. And I go back to my office, want to do this deal, and my analyst is saying, no, don't do this deal. And for 2 months I battled with her and wound up not doing the deal and lost some earnest money as a result of it. But the fact is that don't let your emotions drive your business based on logic.
Very true. As I talked about earlier in this call, it's been a dry spell for us trying to find a community which numbers work in our underwriting here lately. It's been stressful. We've been seeing low 4 cap rates, which are scarce here in some of these markets. We like the 5.5% plus on cap rates. So that alone, we can overlook a low cap rate if the returns are good. If the cash on cash and the returns are good, we can usually overcome that. Yeah. But with that being said, the returns haven't been good. The cash on cash hasn't been there. And for us, we stay true to what we call our big threes. And that's going to be that DSCR, that cash on cash, and then looking at the overall return. And we even do try to factor in the cap rate too sometimes. But with that being said, we look at these things and there's a point where we have to say, no matter how much we love a deal, if it doesn't meet these qualifications, we're not going to do it. For instance, I was talking about the community in Orlando that we're actively, hopefully about to go under contract this week with. And I wanted to put in 3% earnest money because I was like, I love this deal. I have to have this deal. These returns are amazing. I'll be on a plane to Orlando tonight. Don't give this deal to anybody else. That's one of my biggest flaws. And one of my best attributes is I'm all in all the time. And my partners, pump the brakes here. We don't need to give 3% earnest money. We can probably get away with 1% earnest money. And we are getting away with 1% earnest money. But because I was so in love with this deal and this returns, I didn't even think about the finances from that angle. And from 1% to 3%, that's a big chunk of change difference there.
Yeah. It is a big difference. Yeah. And it's good that you have a partner that said pump the brakes, right? Because sometimes we get ahead of ourselves like that. Hey, this show is called Insider Secrets. From a perspective of being in the industry, being a syndicator, from the property management perspective, what kind of insider tip would you give to investors today?
Network with your property management teams. Because I've been on the property management side, I know what happens on a site level, and I can say, don't be scared to tap into your community manager, your assistant community manager, your maintenance director, your leasing agents, because they can tell you what's really going on. A lot of times you'll get a runaround, you'll get a high level. But if a community is struggling, I want to talk to the community manager. I want to get their take on things and see what's really happening. They can tell you if there's a staffing issue. Maybe your staff doesn't jive well together and you need to go to your company and say, hey, we need to look at restaffing or changing some things here to make sure our team's together. Maybe there's a change in the market that you're not aware of. I live in Dallas, Texas. I'm not always going to know what's happening in Orlando, Florida. But with that being said, you got to have that communication with your team there and they can tell you. Yeah. So I would say the biggest tip is communicate effectively with your property management team, get to know them and make them feel comfortable with you. A lot of times they're like, oh, you're the owner, you're someone way up here. And it's not that way. Try to have an open door policy, try to make them feel comfortable to where they can open up to you and express concerns they have.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. That's for sure. And here's what I always say. People want to rush in when they buy a deal and get rid of the management and put new management in place. They think that'll solve a lot of problems. But I always say they know where the dead bodies are buried. And let's not get rid of them right away. Let's just wait. And we can at least see what we need to see before we make any changes like that. The other thing is, too, sometimes people are just tired of the old management, of the old systems. And all they need is some new life. And when we take over a property and we breathe life into them, they get regenerated. And all of a sudden, I found my best district manager in Dallas who worked in a property we bought, who, when we took over the property and she felt re energized, became this bright, shining star in my company. It was amazing to watch. And those are the things you have to be open to the possibilities, right?
Yeah, I love that point. So, one of our core values is to be compassionate.
Mm,
And when you come in and buy a community, the last thing in my mind you should want to do is replace staff. It seems like it's the easiest thing to do, but that should be the last thing you want to do. My partner and I, we both grew up from hardworking families. With that being said, we don't take people's livelihoods lightly. I don't care if it's a $30,000, $40,000 a year job. That is something that we're going to take seriously. So our mission is to never go in and replace. Our mission is to go in and get them to buy into our mission, get them to buy into our core values, to our vision and what we want to achieve, and see if that brings that life to them. See if we can get them on the boat. And we usually call it a 90-day window to see if we can get that buy-in. After 90 days, at that point, that's usually when we say, okay, that this might not be the best job for you, but we don't like to go in and pull the rug out from under people. I would say, if
right.
you're going into a deal, make it clear that you want to keep the management team in place as much as possible, because they're going to be on edge. And what's going to happen if
Yeah.
CM thinks that she's getting fired, he or she or the staff, they quit
Yeah.
performing, they quit following up with leads, they quit completing maintenance requests on time, because they're like, oh, I'm not going to have a job anyways. You don't want that to happen.
Yeah, for sure. That's a big deal, that's for sure. Yeah, so you make a really good point about making sure those people are taken care of. And I really like what you said about they're on edge. The new management's going to take over, what's going to happen. And I always thought if we went in and we reassured them that, hey, you know what, your job is fine, you're going to be
Yeah.
intact. Because there's a critical point there, right? From the time you go to contract till the time you close, if the current owner tends to take their foot off the gas, one of the things I always try to do, and I don't know if you do this or not, is stay involved in that during that closing process to make sure that they're continuing to lease the place and take care of maintenance. And because a lot of times you'll find that the owners all of a sudden pull out and they quit
Very true.
operating.
Yeah, so in our contracts, we've actually started putting a clause in there that work orders need to be completed within 48 hours, because we have been burned by that. And I think everybody's been burned by that. You'll see that current sellers, they want to hold on to their cash. They want to quit paying for work orders to get completed. They want to quit paying for marketing. They really want to conserve. And that puts you at a disadvantage from day one. So that's another reason that relationships are so important. Try to build a relationship with that broker or that seller in regards to, they want to do good for you. A lot of times these sellers own a lot more communities out there. If they have a positive experience with you, they might just end up looping you in on the next one, or they'll ask
Right.
their broker, hey, that company from Dallas, Texas, you think they would be interested in this property? It's like the other one. This industry, it's so big, but it's so small at the same time. And people, it's a habit. You want to go with what you're comfortable with. It's like this philosophy of, something goes wrong in your day, the first person I'm calling is my husband. It's a routine to me. I'm going to call my husband, vent to him about it. It's the same thing in this industry. If someone has a new deal off market, a secret deal, the first person they're going to call is the company that they trust to close on the deal. So
For
it's
sure.
really, yeah. And that's where you and I, we've connected a lot about nourishing those relationships, because you just never know how they're going to impact you, not only today, but down the line.
Yeah, for sure. You bring up a lot of good things, man. We could talk for a long time. There's no doubt about that. I'm glad that we have started this relationship because I
Yeah.
look for more conversations like this. Hey, what insider tip would you give a new investor coming into the market today?
Don't be scared. Don't
Hmm.
be scared to put yourself out there. You're going to get rejected. People are going to ignore you. They're not going to take you seriously. Don't let that set you back. I promise you, I was in that situation not long ago, but it's having that mentality of, you are worthy. You're worthy of this industry. You have a seat at this table. There's resources out there. be all in and don't get discouraged.
Said. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
Hey, Megan, if people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that? If they want to talk about a syndication you might be doing or property management tips or build a relationship, how would somebody get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm an open book. You can go to our website, schedule a time to connect with me at thebremgroup.com. My direct line is 929-243-0076, or you can add me on LinkedIn at Megan Hillis as well. Or they could reach out to you, Mike. You
Yeah.
got my information too.
Yeah, and we'll have Megan's information in the show notes and on our website. So, Megan, thank you so much for today, for being here. You a wealth of knowledge, and I appreciate that. Listeners, thanks for tuning in today. Remember, like us on social media, follow us, subscribe to us, do all that crazy stuff to help us grow. And we appreciate you. Keep listening in. We're going to have more good content over the next several weeks. So we look forward to seeing you all soon. Thanks and have a great day. Megan, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you for joining us for another great episode of Insider Secrets. As always, Insider Secrets is brought to you by My Core Intentions. Join us on social media and visit mycoreintentions.com, where you can get expert coaching on all things multifamily investing and property management. We're looking forward to having you back again next week for more Insider Secrets.